hear anybody.
That was funny.
It sounded a hint pervy when you just listened to it.
That's what I was going for, guys.
So, tell me about those nude models.
You this patrol in my house.
Let's get rolling.
Okay.
This is the 9th episode of the Gogh-Getters.
9.
If you go back to listen to the Will Thomas episode previous, we said it was the 7th. That was a mistake.
Oh.
So I'm giving a correction. That was the 8th episode. This is number 9. And we're coming live-ish from Eaker's Barbershop.
Eaker's Barbershop.
Thank
you, Carrie and Rich, for letting us use one of the coolest spaces in town.
Yep. Coolest space on Main Street.
It is.
God bless Tom.
A lot of history here. Yes. It's their 75th anniversary this year.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yes.
75 years.
75.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a pretty long time.
Yes.
Also, we have some cookies from across the street from Ed's Deli.
Don't even look at my cookie. There better be 3 in that box.
You can't eat them during the show because the last thing you want is
Steve and one have already had their cookies.
I did it before. I pre-gamed this one. So excellent. Well, welcome to podcast number 9 of the Go-Getters. Today we have David Yates on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for. I like being in the. I'm in the top 10.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely.
I'm a little insulted I wasn't in the top 5, but okay. We'll go from there.
Top 10's not bad with a Go-Getters.
Yeah. But we're really excited because we are going to be showcasing your work and your mentor's work, Dennis Ringering. On June 19th it opens. That's next week.
Yeah, we're looking
End of
forward
next
to it.
week, yeah.
But I'd also like to mention that you are also hanging currently at the On God Arts Hotel.
I got a couple of paintings there, yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Both you guys have
Yeah.
pieces there.
Yeah.
That was a nice opening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, very festive.
They even had food, so.
They did have food. They had beverages.
Yeah, they had food and beverages. A lot of people came just for that, and then they stayed for the art. So
Good crowd. And your pieces were in the room with all the food.
Yeah, that's what drew people in to see them.
And they look really great in that space.
They do look great back
Yeah.
They actually fit perfect in the library.
I don't know
I can
that they've
imagine
made any offers yet, though. So it's still available.
So I left just as you guys were all filtering to go do the toast. What did they do? They had a toast in the big room up front?
They took us into a conference meeting room, and then they one by one showed each of our art that's in the show.
Oh, nice.
And then they gave us the mic for 5 seconds.
Oh, so you had to... You guys all
stand
had
up
to
and
talk.
say who we were, where we were from, and
Yeah,
what our piece
they
was.
really just wanted us to say, your name and basically where your work was showing in the hotel. But then other people got into, they really wanted to give their whole background about their life stories and stuff like that. So it just kept going on and on and on,
The classic artist statement.
I could see my wife
4
out
pages.
there. Yeah, I could see my wife out looking at her watch and stuff like that, eyes rolling and stuff like that.
Come on, let's go.
Yeah, but it was
It's a great.
nice.
That hotel's fantastic.
It is.
And it was a
And
great
it's-
opportunity, and I was very fortunate to have.
It's
some work
St.
in the
Louis's
show.
first arts hotel, and I think they do a great job by keeping that going. And
Yeah, it was an honor to be included in that group of
I
people
agree.
and stuff like that.
I
Yeah,
agree. Awesome.
What did they open, 6-7 years ago,
I
maybe?
have no clue.
Yeah.
No longer than that. This is their 14th biennial exhibit. So
yeah. I think
probably
there was
long time.
35 artists that were in the show, but they said 300 had submitted work. So
Right.
yeah,
I
so,
submitted works.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the show.
I sent my work in with a $100 bill. So.
Oh, that's the trick.
That's the
I
trick.
had to buy the appetizers. That's why they let mine in.
So just do you have any other shows other than our Go-Getter show coming up next week?
Actually, I have been asked to show at the Booter branch of the public library in St. Louis on Hampton.
Yeah.
And that starts August 1st.
Oh, that's
It's
excellent.
a busy summer for you.
Yeah, so these shows actually overlap, so I had to do a bunch of whole new little works for the Go-Getter show.
We aim to make our artists work a little harder.
Yeah, I'm waiting for some of the things to dry right now, so so nobody can touch them when they're up on the walls, or else they might takes a little bit of paint with them, so.
So we're really excited about this show, and it's called The Owl and the Loon.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm the loon.
And yes. And
Dennis Ringering.
Dennis is your mentor, and tell us a little bit about the connection you and Dennis have had and how long that goes back.
Okay, well, Dennis and I first met at an opium den in Singapore. No, that's a different story. That's a completely different story. No, actually, Dennis was one of my first instructors out at SIU, and this goes back into the late 70s. But because my major was also drawing, he also became my faculty supervisor. And so, he and I had numerous classes where, he was my instructor and I was the pupil for years and years and years, because I was like on the 15-year plan. Yeah. So I'd go for a while, sow some wild oats, come back, and then, but eventually got through it and stuff like that, So learned a lot along the way from Dennis.
Yeah.
And, he was one of those people that he would say something to you in just a few words, very succinct about the way that he would say things. And, I still find that years and years later, all of a sudden I'll go, that's what he meant, and he, like I said, he could say something in just a few words where other people could tell you, try to explain something to you in an hour and a half, and it still wouldn't have the impact on what you were doing. As much as just those few words that he had to say.
He'd say it in a way that you would need to consider
Ponder.
what he said for quite a while.
It was over my head. I had to go home and look up words.
Yeah, well, and that's how you get things,
Yeah.
more deeply sometimes.
Well, like I said, that there's still times that I'll be actually working in the studio and just go, that's what he was talking about. Like it was a discovery of. A rediscovery of what he was telling me, but what it actually meant beyond just on the surface.
Right.
So, yeah. But then actually, after I graduated, I had little to no contact with Dennis for years and years and years, but it wasn't until I got involved in Art East, and he was one of the, participants in that. And for some reason, when I was going to become part of the Art East show, Susan Bostwick put me in with a group that happened to include some of my other mentors, not only just from SIU, but from high school, like Dennis DeToy was my high school teacher on art, and he was part of that group that was showing at the, we were on the third floor of the Bohm building at that time.
Yeah.
It was, and Mike Smith, another painter.
Yeah, you're mentioning
instructor.
some of our favorite artists for sure.
I mean, people that really
All
had a
legends.
big impact on me, and after that first year, like I said, for some reason, I just got lumped in with them, and I don't even know that Susan had even seen any of my art, so it was just kind of like a stroke of luck that I was put in with these really professional and really, established artists.
Yeah.
And then after that, we went across at Art East to the U.S. Bank for a number of years, and I became the group coordinator for the shows.
Okay.
So we started inviting some of the other instructors, like Tom Geip, who was in sculpture, and
another
Phil
great
Hampton
guy.
was a watercolorist.
Phil Hampton,
Bob,
he was my mentor.
Bob Malone was a printmaker, and Laura Strand in textiles, and so we had a whole group of the people that were. The instructors from out at SIU became part of that group show. But me, Dennis, and Mike Mason, who was also the curator of the university museums, ended up really kind of collaborating on more and more occasions after that. So, so that's kind of how Dennis and I got kind of reconnected after about a 10, 20-year absence.
Wow.
So. I think I've known you most of the time I've lived here, which is 36 years. But I don't. When did you start doing the birds? Because before I knew your name, I always called you the guy that does the cartoon or graphic birds.
The bird thing actually started when I was getting ready for my BFA show. I always had an interest in nature. So when I was getting ready for my BFA show, I started looking at the works that I had completed, and the ones that had birds as the subject matter, I thought were the most successful. So to have kind of a continuity in my show, I selected birds as the subject matter, and that allowed me to have like drawings and paintings and printmaking, that were all part of the show. So I was using different media, but I kept the theme of the birds the same. So there was a continuity in the show. And, here 45 years later, I just haven't ran out of ideas yet.
Well, what I like is you do these bigger ones that are more complex, but I really, a lot of times, am drawn even more to the smaller ones and the graphic quality of those. Would you say that to me, it's almost contemporary art meets graphic design?
I think
to a
it
degree.
is, yeah.
Well, it's interesting that for a living I did graphics for a number of years, and the better I got at the graphics, the better I got in the studio, and the better I got in the studio, the better I got at the graphics. So, a lot of the same principles that Dennis taught in drawing are the same principles that apply to all the other types of art. I mean, the basic rules are still there, whether it's, you're learning line, shape, and form, and composition. And all those things are still...
The rudiments.
They translate and can be carried over into all the other things, even three-dimensional art. I even see a lot of the same, basics that even extend into other arts, like in performing arts and stuff, because there's always I always look at everything as that there's two parts to it, two basic parts. The what you do and how you do it. And the what you do is the creative end of things, and the what you do is the technical end of things. So each type and form of art have those two basic things involved. So those are, the things that I always kind of look at, whether it's, if you're doing graphic art, or even if you're writing something, or, or you're singing a song or anything like that, how's it made up? Because those two components are always going to be there, the how you do it and what you're doing. So
it's really interesting, because I've thought, as I've looked at your work, I thought the subject matter was really curious, in a good way. Kind of funny sometimes, kind of comical. And yet the style is like super tight, hard edge. Your style reminds me a little of some of the like 60s and 70s contemporary painters like Tom Wesselman or Frank Stella even, which is all totally abstract stuff, but real crisp, hard lines.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about technique, about how you produce such clean, sharp, hard, and the colors laid down. The color fills are almost like they've been sprayed in. So do you mask things or use Priscus or templates?
I use, like on hard edges and stuff, a lot of straight line and stuff, I will use masking tape and stuff like that to get those hard edges and stuff. But, I started getting more to where I use templates and stuff to make the circles so that they're round and stuff. And then there's just, the practice, the mileage, and I think the other part about that is that the more you do, the more confident you get in what you're doing. So you'll take on things a little bit, more challenging as you develop. And you also know what you can do and what you can't do. So some of it is knowing yourself. And when you were mentioning like some of the smaller pieces, and those are really there's a lot of relationships between the big paintings and the smaller ones. But with because everything is really pretty closed form, that they do have those hard edges and stuff. But the little ones allow me to experiment technically where I don't have a lot of time involved on it. You don't want to, do things that you're not familiar with on the bigger ones as much. But now I know what the medium.
It's riskier.
I know what the medium's going to do once I translate it up into the bigger ones by experimenting on the little ones.
Right.
So
would you call them studies, maybe, or you don't really do bigger ones based on the small ones?
They're a whole separate series in and of themselves.
Okay.
I think that they're getting more cubistic as time has progressed, and what's interesting on those, I think, is that.
What do you mean by like a little more abstract, or?
Yeah, and there's some, some of the lines will carry from one form and one shape into another, so that it's not like that there's, just all these separate entities. They're integrated together.
Yeah,
more.
okay.
But they still have the hard edge on it. But
Right.
there's not necessarily, this is where the bird begins and this is where the landscape begins, that they're kind of intertwined,
Yeah.
so that you'll see the lines continuing from one through the next, form,
Makes for an interesting composition.
Yeah, I'm cracking I can't think of this mid-century illustrator that does birds and then
Huh.
Charles, I think. I may have to ask my researcher to look it up over here. But it reminds me, it has that look to it, but it also has that kind of cubist.
That would be Juan.
Hard-edged.
Yeah. Quite honestly, I think that my work really draws in from a lot of different art movements.
Yeah.
Whether it's pop art, whether it's cubist,
It's really
Some surrealism.
surrealism. Yeah. I mean, there's all those.
Yeah.
And and one of the things
I hadn't
that
thought of that.
the people, if they really have gone back and looked at the work, they'll see that there used to be a lot of like actual borrowing from art history, where there was actual paintings from masters that have been included into the paintings, and the reason I was doing that was for multiple reasons, and one of the reasons is that I always liked connecting the past with the present,
Yeah.
But the other thing is that it let me dissect other people's work and learn how they were making
Learn from that,
compositions.
yeah.
But then also you were also getting to see what their palettes were, what colors and stuff they were using, because some things come naturally to you, but then other things are from observation and like I said, you're borrowing from other people. And so that made it where, it expands your toolbox of things that you're.
I think one of my favorite things about you and Dennis is you both devoted yourself to this subject matter.
Right.
And I love it. It's kind of the Joseph Albers.
Well, you have too.
Right. Which is very inspiring. Both these guys, very inspiring
Yeah.
to my work for sure. And that's a good lead in to tell us a little bit about Dennis's work.
Dennis, I guess for the most part, since we got reacquainted, has always been interested in. He always says the marks that man makes, so the symbols and stuff, and and specifically, when I first got reacquainted with him, that he was doing things based with petroglyphs and pictographs from southwestern Native American art. That was, and it has expanded a little bit to, some things overseas in Aborigines art and stuff like that. But for the most part, it was all based on symbolism of the Native Americans, especially from the Southwest.
When I visited his studio a couple times, he would refer to them as the glyphs.
The glyphs, yeah. Petroglyphs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always refer to them that.
Well, and it's the way he kind of carves into the canvas.
Well, I think
the
really
thick layer that he's laid on. It's like carved in stone kind of stuff.
That's something has been developed over the years. Like when I first started seeing him, he was doing things like in pastel and pencil, but then he moved into where he was using paints because he was trying to replicate, where these images were found out in nature. They were on cave walls and they were on stones, and and so he started building up that surface to try to recreate, what the images were really appeared on.
Sometimes it would have even been inscribed into like clay pottery or pieces like that.
Yeah, there for a while he was actually building up that surface, and then he was using an X-Acto knife to carve back out like what you really would have done on a rock.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He was spending hundreds of hours on every one drawing because they were so complex.
Yeah.
Even though that a lot of the work that he'll do has all these little subtle things in there, but he was building up that surface, and then he'd come back with like a subtractive process to make those the images and stuff like that. But as time wore on, he had to once again kind of reinvent himself because of just the physical strain using an X-Acto knife for hundreds and hundreds of hours was, his physically, his hands weren't able to continue to do that. So now he does, builds it up on canvas instead, or on a panel instead of paper.
Yeah.
And he uses, he uses some of that subtractive process, but not nearly as much as what he did, where he's actually painting back on top of the painted surfaces and stuff like that.
Some of the pieces too, like Nightbird 2, let's use that as an example. Just those yellows and orange just explode.
Oh yeah.
And then there's some newer ones we saw in the studio that day. Those deep reds.
Oh God,
beautiful.
His palette. I mean, he has a general palette.
Yeah.
That's like very warm, and it looks like it's based in like natural pigments. Clay, color.
Yeah,
and,
I mean the colors that he was choosing. There were a lot of it was tied into the landscape of the Southwest and stuff like that. So I mean. But
he tweaks it a little bit.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff we just saw in his studio with you and Carrie a few weeks ago. I mean, like you said, the reds, the oranges, yellows. I mean, they're not. Those words don't describe the colors.
Yeah. Well, he's starting to take a little creative license where he's varying off that.
Well, it's
that
incredibly
palette.
beautiful palette.
Yeah.
Yes,
and it's amazing what he can do with a fairly limited palette.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't see a lot of like blues and greens or grays or.
But
it's all striking.
Even with the colors that you have, when you limit your palette, you still can make a ton of different variations of that. I mean, when people look at my work, I only use 8 different colors and have only been used.
Well, I was going to mention your palette too.
I've only used 8 different colors, and I've used those on both the big paintings, the small paintings, and anything else that I do, so that there's always a continuity. But you can you can mix every color in the rainbow by just using a limited thing.
Right. I mean, it's admirable that he can get so much with such a limited palette.
Well,
but he's probably got like 30 different red oranges that he uses, but they're all red orange.
But, I mean, just by, even if you just took his yellow ochre and his red ochre, I mean, just think how many variations that he could.
Right.
A little bit more of this and a little bit more of that, or a little less of this. I mean, and it comes up with a completely different shade. And like I said, his stuff is so subtle in so many ways that those you can see that the graduation of like colors and even like in the way that he carves stuff, that if it's built up in layers just by subtracting a little bit or more, it's going to get down into a different layer of color. It's almost like if you were putting coats of paint on a wall, and you carved off the first, then you see the second, before you get down to the wallpaper that was there from 40 years ago.
And his drawing style, it doesn't really copy what the native artist would have done. It's definitely his own style, but it's, I guess, derivative. Is that the word?
Yeah. I think what he does is he has references that he looks at, whether it's stuff that he's seen actually in person or through his library of books and stuff like that, and he'll base it on some of the mythology,
right?
And most of the pieces, they're not just him putting symbols down. There's usually a story behind it. Like say for example that he's had some health issues at one time or another. So he might base something using the symbols from Native Americans, but it has to do with the way that he's currently feeling,
his
or
personal,
I mean, so there's personal things in there, or even like say the political landscape might be an inspiration to him choosing the symbols and the color choices and stuff that he makes. So it's more than just trying to emulate what the Native Americans do.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's his own style,
Yeah, I
but
mean, there's creative license.
There's an ancient basis
Yeah.
that influences him.
Yeah.
But I also find there's something, just the way he makes strokes, the gestures. His pieces always look like they have something like that just makes you feel good. They're kind of happy, the figures. I'm always like. I always feel like pleased when I look at his work.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
and that's interesting because, like I said, they're not all necessarily happy pieces.
they're not. I'm talking more about
Yeah.
the drawing style though,
Yeah.
with not even considering the meaning of the piece. But it's kind of fun drawing that he does.
I mean, when I look at the pieces, I see a lot of the elements and that he was trying to teach us back in drawing class. I mean, I see all that. He always told me that to make decisions that are uniquely yours, and that you're also responsible for every inch of the canvas.
Yeah.
And you see those things that he does in his work.
Yeah.
I mean, he's leading by example, and I'm still, even though I've been doing this for decades, more than I care to. Remember that I'm still learning from him because I'm still seeing it. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by somebody that's always been such a professional that even at the later stages of our lives, I'm still learning.
Absolutely.
There's
that's what keeps it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you still feel kind of like you're on the trajectory up, because there's still much more to learn.
Yeah.
And and having Dennis as a mentor and somebody that you can socialize with, along with, seeing his professionalism, in the studio, we also get to, talk philosophy about art too.
Yeah.
So it's not just your perspective's all wrong, here, Dave.
Yeah, right,
So,
right,
it goes
right.
beyond that. It's where we always actually discuss, things like I always bring up about, you taught me all the rules, and it's up to me now to break them. Or what liberties I can take.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times that I'll start sneaking stuff in my bigger paintings and stuff to see if he'll notice it.
Oh, really?
That's how some of the stuff started. Where I'll change like the language or the perspective, or there'll be something that's really technically modeled as best as I can get it, and then right next to it there's a completely flat surface where I haven't done anything. It's a flat color there, and it was just challenging. But now it's kind of been like some of my MO in that. I think that it takes people with an art background to notice all these things because now the goal has been like trying to put all these different things into one thing, but there's got to be a harmony between all the images and the entities that are involved.
Right.
All those elements, if they're on one thing, no matter if they're different, the way that they're handled, you have to have a balance and a harmony, and that's what I try to achieve.
Yeah.
Especially when
Dennis
when things
does
are very
that
custom.
too. I think you probably learned that from Dennis.
Well, like I said, and the other part is like I said, trying to sneak things past him and see if he'll notice something. And most of the time he would pick up on it, or so.
So last year, probably about May or June, I had the opportunity to sit in on a critique.
Yeah.
And so when you finish one of your big pieces,
let's go stopping point. It's not really finished until the varnish goes on.
But you take it to Dennis and you guys sit. I was there, so I walk in and you guys are sitting in two chairs right beside each other, looking at this painting up against the wall.
Well, he wouldn't let me sit on his lap. That's why we had the two chairs there.
So.
You got to draw the line. You got to have some guidelines.
So when he does that, how do you? I mean, I think in one of the things that I remember, he was questioning maybe the perspective of something.
Yeah,
Do you always do what he says? Do
No.
you? Okay.
Because, sometimes you just can't. You're so far along in the painting that some of the things that he's pointing out to you, I mean, you really would basically just have
Start
to
over.
rework the thing. I do a lot of the stuff that he suggests because he sees things that, after you're working on a painting and you've been doing it for months, you do lose some of your objectivity.
Yeah,
So you're not seeing things the same way that other people do it. But it's always nice to have those things pointed out. So, one of the things that I always ask myself when I'm done with a painting and, it's varnished and it's hanging on the wall is that I look at it and I always go, if I was going to do this again, what would I do differently next time? And that's where you think about the things like Dennis has said. But it's also, being more critical of myself that, I don't like this area, for some reason. But what is that reason?
You look like you enjoyed the process very much, even if he suggested making this change. You look like you were enjoying.
I really enjoyed, getting to talk art. I think that, that was one of the hardest things about when you leave like the academic environment, that you don't get that feedback from the people that that you respect. So that this really has allowed me to step right back into that. Being in college 40 years ago or whatever it's been. That we still have that that positive and negative feedback that comes with it. And, things to ponder whether you can actually do anything about it or not.
It was also very complimentary of the parts he liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where, if you, I had somebody not too long ago at a show tell me, they said, I had that Dennis Ringering for his teacher once. And he goes, if you ever got a compliment from him, you earned it.
I can see that.
And really, let's face
That's
it,
fair.
that the source, if somebody says something about your work, and whether they're criticizing it or they're complimenting it, if you really respect what they're doing, that carries a lot more weight.
Now, would you critique his work as well? Was that a give and take?
Yeah, actually,
That's a good question. I never thought of asking
Yeah,
that.
actually, more and more, he started valuing my opinion about stuff, and I think that some of that comes with the confidence of doing it a lot. But also, it also came from the confidence in me and developing as an artist and seeing things that maybe I wouldn't have seen 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You really do get to that point where you notice and see things from a different perspective. And as we just talked a little bit earlier, that if you've been working on something for a long time, it's very easy to lose your objectivity. So to have a new set of eyes on it, to point out, like I'm seeing this where, it doesn't seem like the weight and the balance is right to me, like, or this, an object that he has, that maybe that you do want to increase a little bit of the contrast on it so that, it changes a little bit of the weight of the piece and stuff like that. There's times that I get to critique his work, and that's a good feeling, just being able to, that the student gets to,
the student becomes the teacher.
Yeah.
So the loon becomes the owl, right?
Yeah.
For a moment.
Yeah, I still know my place though.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Right.
The loon part's where I shine.
Yeah.
Well, it was a great experience sitting in on that. It was fabulous.
It's one of those things that, most of the time when we do that, we'd also go out and have lunch and stuff like that. So, there was it helped bond a friendship.
Yeah.
And then also, like I said, then you'd get back and not only talk about the work, but then also talk about just art in general. And like I said, just some of the philosophies and, how you got to this point and stuff like that, so that, we would talk art history and, and he'd give me other people like maybe to, he would mention along the way that maybe I should look into.
I think we mentioned this in our first podcast in the back room, some of the favorite artists we had when I first moved here when we were all young, Dan Anderson, Dennis Ringering, and Susan and yourself and people like that. Big
don't know that I should be
inspiration.
lumped in with them, but okay.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely be lumped.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thanks for including me in that group. You know,
You lump
Well,
it.
I just
you know, I don't know why I wasn't in the top 5 though. You know, now that-
You weren't in the top 5.
Yeah,
You were like 8 or 9 when we made the list.
Yeah, you know,
No, I just remember as a graphic designer, I see these guys and they're painting. I'm going, man, I want to do that.
Yeah.
well, you know what? I'll tell you what.
Loosen up a bit,
That,
huh?
Yeah.
that it really has. You know, Dennis still kids me to this day about like when he first started seeing my paintings, that he said that I painted with red, yellow, and blue. You know, and he still gives me trouble about those
Yeah.
primary colors because there was not very much variation in that. Everything had in the initial ones really had more of a cartoon-like appearance. But the philosophy has really kind of changed. I mean, from the opening of when I started doing the big paintings, I wanted them to be where there was a reflection of my personality in them, and so they, there was like this trying to make them happy and, feel good and stuff like that. But as time goes on, you kind of realize, that you grow as an artist and stuff like that, and that you don't have to have everything garishly painted for it to be, a little tongue-in-cheek or have a little humor to it, but still also be serious about what you're doing. I mean, I think that outwardly you could say that the paintings generally reflect, should say something about the artist's personality, I think. So on the outwardly, they're fun and you can see a little sense of humor and stuff like that. But the more that you look at them, it's like with people that you see that there's more of a complex layer involved when you get to know a person. We see what we see outwardly, but then like I said, the more that you look and get to know somebody, you see that there's multiple layers to that person. And the paintings and stuff are the same way.
So I posted the postcard you laid out with your piece on it. And the first comment was from a friend, Kay Bird. She said, well, that's fun. And it's one of your bird paintings. And I thought, yeah. And that's what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
So this person got it.
Yeah. Like I said, you do want them to be fun. But like with the little paintings, I call those the fledgling paintings. That there's actually, besides just being fun, a lot of people notice that the birds are actually kind of in pieces where they're scrambled and stuff.
Yeah.
And that actually was a result of me going out and actually doing bird watching. And what happens is that when you're bird watching, when you're out in the field, that's what they call it. A lot of times you only have a couple of seconds to see a bird and identify it.
Yeah.
But what happens is that you don't get all the details, like say, for example, what kind of beak did it have? What kind of, did it have a ring around its eye? Did it have, what kind of tail did it have? How long were its legs? All these questions. And so those fledgling paintings were actually a result of saying, okay, I know I'm missing information when I'm out in the field because you don't get to see everything.
Yeah.
So the pieces actually were constructed from that point of view of that I'm missing things. So that's why like the beaks are not attached to the heads, that are not attached to the bodies, and the feet they were all separate pieces because and if you'll notice that one wing might not be the same as the other wing because like I said, you couldn't gather all that information in just those couple of seconds that you had to try to identify that bird. So those paintings were actually based on, very rarely using any kind of reference. They're based on what I remembered from being out in the field.
Yeah.
That's great.
So so there's an actual story behind them
Right.
them just being fun. So there was that complex layer of what the whole idea of the subject matter was.
It just kind of fed into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's I think early in anyone's art education, we used to do in like 100-level drawing, we would do 10-second fast charcoal sketches on, a big 30 by 40 newsprint pad with a live model. And man, it taught you to like look at that and get the basic elements down
the
like
core,
that.
You got to get the core elements.
But it teaches you how to look
Yeah.
and see.
That's where Dennis would go, is that line concave or convex? You know?
Right.
And all of a sudden go, okay.
It's
which
concavix.
one goes which one goes which way? You know, but think about those things. Even now that I still, when I'm setting up the drawings on the big canvas and stuff, I still think about, is this supposed to go concave, or is it go
right.
which way is it going to make it more successful?
Yeah.
You get to cheat, but but you still have to think about all those things when when he says that you're responsible for every inch of that canvas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are all the kind of things that
you can't blame anyone else if something doesn't work.
Well,
unless you're collaborating, I guess.
Dennis and I always laugh that when the paintings and the artwork is in the studio, it belongs to you. But once you get it outside and put it on the wall, it belongs to everybody else.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
true.
So when you think that way, I think it makes you more critical of what you're doing. Because like I said,
well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, and that was the other good thing for me about being around Dennis and Mike Mason and Mike Smith and all those people that were my mentors, is that they always did everything with a level of professionalism that made you want to be the same. That they set the bar at a level that you wanted to be at that level. You didn't want to be the link at the bottom.
Right.
So it always kind of pushed you to try to be better.
Yeah.
And it wasn't it's not an ego thing. It's just that desire to want to be good, and when you have people like that setting an example for you, I mean, it's real easy.
I want to be that good.
I want to be that good.
Yeah.
Do you want to quickly talk about your comic strip?
Oh, sure. I'll talk.
Norton and Ruford.
Norton and Ruford.
Yes. I had to have a bird in there. It's a pig and a rooster.
Tell them how many you've done.
Yeah, I'm getting close to 1,500 comic strips now.
How about that?
Yeah. Really, the comic strip, the characters in the comic strip were actually first drawn when I was in 6th grade. So
they haven't evolved at all.
One night, 50 years later, I was laying in bed and I dreamed about them being in a comic strip. And
God.
But
really?
but the thought was that because I had so many other things going on, how could I wanted to do it in a way that I was going to be able to reproduce it on a regular basis all the time. Yeah. And then it occurred to me that most comic strips, that the drawings, when you think about the comic strips, that people think about them being funny drawings. But if you really read the comic strips and you look at them closely, you'll find that most of the time there's nothing really funny going on within that panel. It's somebody talking to somebody else or something like that. So I thought, well, why don't we just
the dialogue's funny,
it goes in the writing is most of it.
Yeah.
I mean, and so it was going to be okay. I can be really lazy by not changing what they're doing, other than maybe like putting a hat on the rooster or,
Exactly. You've got these little elements that you drop in.
Now he belches fire for some reason, that he keeps eating at the burrito barn. Yeah. And, these little small things might, add to the drawing part, but it's more based on the writing. And then the other element about the being lazy part too was that you'll never ever see any additional characters in it, but they'll refer to like where they each got their own families and cousins, and they go to these certain places and stuff. So you're leaving everything to the imagination of the reader. But really, to backtrack a little bit, the whole purpose of it was I started up post-pandemic, and I thought we all just could use a laugh, The first thing it says on the homepage is that humor's to be shared.
Yeah.
And that's what the whole point is. Mm-hmm. And I sent it out to a lot of my, maybe like 30 or 40 friends on a monthly basis, and then posted it on Facebook. And it's really just to let other people know I'm thinking about you guys. Yeah. I'm still here and I'm still kicking. And, it's just stay in touch with people. A lot of times the people just write me back and said, I like this strip or whatever. And, but it really was just to share a little sense of humor at a time. I thought that we could probably use it.
And it's been a nice respite from the real news of the world, the last...
Well, and for me, it's also another creative outlet.
Sure.
I mean, it's, something that I can continue to do in addition to doing any paintings that I'm doing and photography work, and any of the other stuff are graphics and stuff too. So
where can we see the comic strip?
It's on nortonroofer.com.
How do you spell that?
No, I didn't. I was going to
You
have to
should
spell.
get on his mailing list.
NORTONRUFORD
.com.
dot
.co.
COM.
Okay, I got that part.
Yeah.
I want people to go see it. So I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that they see
Yeah,
it.
you know,
They're really great little strips, little 4-panel strips.
It's kind of in a newspaper format, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Traditional
Well,
news-
you know how hard this is to do because you were doing a strip for a while.
Yeah, it's one of
And
my
it's
true
coming
loves.
up with a
It's hard to
material.
do.
Yeah.
It's
I
a
mean-
rare combination to be able to draw and do the dialogue
Right.
and
And to continue doing
Right.
that much of it. That's what
I had a
blows
friend
me away.
once tell me, he said, I could do one and then that'd be it, you know.
Yeah, well,
You know,
that's how I
and-
feel. I'd have like 10 jokes.
Well,
I'd be,
I-
well, now what do I
Done.
do?
Yeah.
You know?
You know, what's been interesting is that learning how to, it's evolved in so that you learn how to do the storytelling and the writing and the jokes, and that there's so many different ways to tell a joke
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Mostly my wife thinks that they're all wrong, but
But you know what? There's
Yeah.
continuity in your strips,
Yeah.
too. You get to know these characters, and they're kind of predictable in what their behavior, who's going to say what to who.
yeah, I mean, and that's just the evolution of
Yeah,
it. I
yeah.
mean, not only just the characters, but me doing it. Actually, we were talking about my art. Some of the first memories that I have of being art was me drawing the comics out of the newspaper, Charlie Brown and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
With
used to
laying
copy
down with my
those.
sister, she would show me the newspapers, and I'd draw all that. I do have one kindergarten story for you. That
Yeah,
you
I'd love to
probably
hear
would
that.
Yeah.
One of my first experiences as art, this is probably why I became an artist. My mom was called to my kindergarten class, and they wanted, and there was
That's never
evidently
good.
something that was the matter.
That's never good.
And so she goes in there, and the teacher was talking to my mom about the art that I was drawing, and it turned out that I was drawing the people in my drawings they're anatomically correct.
Oh, okay.
So I'm in kindergarten, and my mom had to explain that they took me to the art museum, and I had seen like the Greek statues and stuff like that. So there was like nothing really perverted happened around the house or anything.
Right.
I was just duplicating what I had
What you
seen.
saw.
But once you get that kind of attention, in kindergarten, you feed off of it. So I guess that
That's
was where I was
hilarious, man.
destined to be.
That is funny.
Yeah.
hilarious.
Now I'm just still waiting for all the dollars to roll in and the groupies that comes with being an artist.
Yeah,
So,
right.
yeah.
That's so awesome. I always like to ask this question of our guests, like, if you can imagine, like, who you'd want to hang your work with, or a place that you'd like to hang it. Like, what would be your dream hang of where your art would be?
I think that like the St. Louis Art Museum, obviously, just because of every time you walk in the doors there, it's the inspiration that you get when you sit and see those kind of works.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times that you'll see works that have been in art history books and stuff like that, but until you really experience them in person and stuff like that, the colors, the scale, and all those other things that vary
Even
from
the
one book to
concepts
you go sit, you look at a Mark Rothko in a book, and then you go and look at one in person.
Right.
There's just a whole different,
Oh, those 3 Van Gogh. Every time I walk around the corner, I want to just touch.
scratch and sniff and lick,
Just hold the same canvas that guy had.
Yeah.
There's a Van Gogh self-portrait in the Art Institute in Chicago. It's about probably 10 by 14 maybe. It's well-known image. And my God, you walk up and look at that thing, and it's just alive. It's just
you
feel like when they turn the lights off, that thing is like still like glowing or something.
I remember going to an impressionist show at the Art Museum in St. Louis. This is probably 35 years ago or something, pretty close to it. And I walked in there, and and you study all these people in art history and stuff like that. But I walked out of the show a much bigger fan of Degas than I had been previously, because the works, and until I saw him actually in person and saw what he was doing, and the striking colors and the technical ability. Like I said, some of the other people in the show were probably getting a little bit more of the Monets and stuff, were kind of what the focus of the show was. But like I said, I walked in there, and it was a completely different experience of who you walk out, admiring and stuff like that. So I mean, so I think
probably
seeing those in in person, I mean, that's why
it can be like a really moving experience, almost like you're having an epiphany or something when you connect with a piece of art like that, or suddenly get something that you just hadn't understood before.
Well, you draw inspiration from it. And a lot of times, like I said, I will put pieces of art history in my work just because I always like that juxtaposing the present and the past. And like I said, you do borrow elements from all these different movements and stuff like that. So it's not just one genre that you're looking at. It's looking and borrowing and trying to create something that's uniquely yours, but it encapsulates all those other artists that came before you.
Yeah, and it indicates some respect for the artists of the past.
Well, I haven't got that respect yet.
No,
that's because people know.
You respecting them.
I was going to say, I think I have to die first before I.
We are super excited about this show.
Yeah.
Is this the first time you guys have shown together?
No, we've shown together at in different group shows. There's been once or twice, I think, that we have shown where it was just the two of us. But it's been a number of years where it's only been the two of us. But we recently had a show right before the pandemic where Susan Bostwick and Linda Miller were with us in Belleville at a show.
Well, and you did that. You did a show with Susan and Linda with us, right?
Yeah. Susan
like 2
wasn't
years
in it.
ago.
No, Susan wasn't in it.
It was
Linda,
Christy Cook.
Christy Cook.
Oh, it was Christy Cook. That's right. I'm
yeah.
sorry. I apologize.
Well, thank you so much for being on the Go-Getter podcast.
Yeah.
We are thrilled to have this show.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, well, if you ever start a new one, maybe I can get in the top 5.
We'll think about that.
Well, I don't know. Don't.
It's too late.
Well, David Yates, Owl and the Loon with Dennis Ringering. We open June 19th.
Right.
Hopefully this podcast will be out by then. And then how long are we running? Do you remember?
This is going to probably
into the fall?
Probably go into the first 2 weeks of September.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to be great.
I know that we
pretty
talked at the end.
Well, it's 2 months.
Right. Well,
August,
it was originally set for the end of August, but the next artist needs a couple weeks extension, which we'd love to have your work up a little longer.
Yeah.
What I heard was by popular demand.
That was right.
By popular
Exactly.
demand.
That's
Public demand.
That's a good translation of what we were just saying,
The
Dave.
public demanded
That is very certainly how we're going to pose it when we get to that point and say that it's extended.
I'm hearing what I want to hear, yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. So let's wrap it up.
Thank you
This
so
is
much for
great.
having me.
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank you,
it.
David.
Thank you, David.
All right, let's get going.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis. Yeah.